This is Lara at Elliott Wave Gold with your daily analysis for the trading week ending Friday 24th of October. I was expecting downward movement for Friday. We got some. We have a small red candlestick, but really mostly price just moved sideways. It's remained comfortably below the invalidation point, but that sideways movement has necessitated a reanalysis at the hourly chart level. The target's still the same though. I still expect a few more days of downward movement to reach 1190.04 or below. It's possible we could see a new low below 1183.06 by the end of next week. Let's have a look at the charts at for the main wave count at the daily chart level, and for all my wave counts I'm seeing primary wave 4 over here, because here it has perfect alternation and almost perfect proportion with primary 2. Primary 2 was a deep rear running flat, primary 4 is a shallow regular contracting triangle. If 4 is over here, then at 956.97, 5 would reach equality in length with 1, but as I keep saying, if that target is wrong, it's going to be too low. Because when triangles take their time and move price close to the apex before they break out of their trend lines, then the wave that follows them is often more weak and brief than you'd otherwise expect it to be. And here's a perfect example of what I mean. Here's a fourth wave triangle which was followed by a very brief short fifth wave. We might be about to see that happen here at primary degree. I think the target for this whole movement down to end is best calculated at intermediate degree, so when I have intermediate waves 1 through to 4 within primary 5 complete, I will recalculate the target, and if it changes it will probably move upwards. For now I'm only able to calculate it at primary degree, so that's what I'll do. For now we're looking for intermediate wave 2 to complete. It's most likely to be a relatively deep correction because it's a second wave, so at this stage the target for it to finally end is about the 0.618 ratio for intermediate 1, just below 1281. It looks like it's subdividing as a flat correction, subdividing 3, 3, 5. This upward movement subdivides best as a double zigzag. You can't have a double within a multiple. You can't have multiples within multiples. So because this is a multiple and it's probably just minor wave A, that indicates that intermediate 2 is a flat because A subdivides as a 3, and we can't label this double zigzag as W of a multiple. Let's have a look at this idea on the hourly chart, where minor A ends up here, this point here. All this sideways movement has necessitated a reanalysis of this downward movement. I think this time-consuming sideways movement is a zigzag for a fourth wave, counterpart to this second wave correction. They're not perfectly in proportion, but the proportions are good enough for it to have somewhat of the right look. So, if this is the fourth wave, it's very likely now to be complete. If it were to continue further sideways and higher, it would start to be too grossly out of proportion to my minuet wave 2, and then the wave count would not have the right look. But technically it could continue, so if it does, it can't move into wave 1 price territory above 1240.55. Although if that invalidation point is passed on Monday, then I would probably relabel this, instead of 1, 2, 3, I would relabel this ABC and see minute wave A complete here as a 3-wave structure. What that means is if A is a 3, then B has to make a deep correction and can make a new price extreme beyond the start of A. We could see a new high above this invalidation point. But what I think is much more likely, and so the only chart I'm going to give for you, is that minute wave A is an incomplete 5-wave structure, because if it's over here, looking at the whole thing on the daily chart, it would be just way too brief and far too shallow. I really do think it's much more likely to continue on downward. So if minute wave A subdivides as a 5-wave structure, as it looks like it is doing, then once it's complete, the following wave up for minute B may not move beyond the start of A above 1255.40. The target for minute A to end is at 1219, where minuet 5 would reach equality in length with minuet 1. The third wave is longer than the first wave, but there's no Fibonacci ratio between minuet waves 1 and 3, so I will expect to see a Fibonacci ratio between 5 and either 3 or 1, and equality with 1 is the most likely. Draw a channel around minute A using Elliott's second technique from 2 to 4, then place a copy on 3. Look for the fifth wave to probably end around midway in that channel. At the daily chart level, this wave count is absolutely identical to the main wave count right up to this point here, and then I've just moved the degree of labelling within this all up 1 degree. This wave count has a very low probability because it would see not just a shallow second wave correction, but it's far too brief in comparison to the first wave it's correcting. There's no difference in the expectation of downward movement. At 993, intermediate 3 would reach 1.618, the length of intermediate 1. But the difference is in the structure expected to unfold down. A third wave may only subdivide as an impulse, so if we start to see a clear impulse developing to the downside rather than a B wave, and if it shows a clear strong increase in downward momentum, this would be a good explanation, but it has a really low probability. Within intermediate 3, no second wave correction may move beyond the start of its first wave above 1255.40. This alternate wave count simply moves the degree of labelling within primary 5 all up 1 degree. This has a very low probability, not just because primary 5 would have a $2.66 truncation. That only slightly reduces the probability. The problem is this choppy, overlapping corrective movement. If we have a new trend at cycle degree, we should see a very clear 5 up on the daily chart, and this upward movement does not subdivide well at all as a 5-wave structure. It's much more likely to be corrective. That's all for me today with your gold analysis, and I hope all our members are having a fabulous weekend.